As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support for people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast. You're listening to Burn and Return, a weekly 1-hour podcast covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries.
Daggum. They started over again. No. Listen, hey, it's time for Burn and Return. We wanted to do the show so gosh darn badly that we play the intro twice because that's things happen around here. It's okay. We don't have, all the bells and whistles that some of our other friends do. But listen, tonight what we do have is my good friend Ray Ito is here. Matt is on assignment. He's out working and doing things that make him more money than this show because you know what? We pander to everybody and try to get all their money from Patreon and all those other sources. Just a fledgling show here, ladies and gentlemen. Bunch of worthless creeps. We have no other jobs, no other means of gainful employment. And so this is what we've pegged our entire future on. And I'm glad to do it tonight with Ray. Ray, how are you this evening?
I'm good at the moment, Ryan. I'm good. I mean, I was telling J-Pink that I spent the day drinking coffee and not getting a darn thing done. I mean,
that's a good Sunday in my book.
Yeah, because I personally do not believe in the hustle and productivity culture. I think it's bullshit.
Give me an example of what who is the largest offender in the hustle and productivity culture right now, if you had to peg it on one person.
Hustle and productivity culture, I'd probably say anybody, and I repeat, anybody that is on YouTube telling other people how to live. Anybody.
Well, there you go. I think we'll get into the whole turf self-help thing here a little bit later on in one of our segments because that does tend to happen. But before we do all that, we've got to get through the headlines.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
Well, Ray, we're going to start off with some good news, and that being that wholesale fertilizer prices are tumbling. Bloomberg writers Kim Chetman and Elizabeth Elkin reported Friday that, quote-unquote, corn farmers stung by soaring fertilizer costs in the aftermath of Ukraine's invasion are poised for further relief as wholesale prices tumble to the lowest in almost 2 years. So they're talking a little bit here. They kind of slide through a few things. And one of the interesting things here, Ray, is if we go down to the average price, this is UAN, urea ammonium nitrate, which isn't so much of a big turf product per se, but it's interesting to watch the price curves here. So they're showing, for those of you that are following along on the audio format, the huge increase in UAN on a per ton basis starting in 2021. Where we started off the year in January of 21, right about $250 or so a ton, and then spiking all the way up to just below $700 a ton. It stayed pretty flat through last year, and now it's starting to decline. Now, it's nowhere near those 2021 prices, but things are headed in the right direction here, Ray. So, I think one thing I wanted to point out here, they talked about a little bit about, DAP is going down, so all the other fertilizers outside of nitrogen, right, are going down at a little bit slower rate as it currently stands. But I think what we wanted to highlight here from a headlines perspective is you're seeing a lot of publicity out there, especially in the lawn care space, more so on the homeowner and DIY side, and less so on the professional side with regards to fertilizer prices. And I think the main thing we wanted to say here, Ray, is just that this decline in wholesale prices is good, but it's going to take a while to get that previously purchased inventory out of the market, right? That was purchased at higher prices, and thus it's going to be priced at retail at higher prices to recoup those costs. So, what are you seeing out there in general terms of fertilizer pricing? Ray, are things steady? Are they down? Are they up? What are you seeing out there?
Okay, just as you said, I'm seeing the effects of last year's price spikes to this day because I got a quote for a product that I was looking for that was basically a 25-30 soluble, right? And my professional user price on that product was literally $50 for 25 pounds, whereas prior to the Ukrainian incident and even prior to COVID, an equivalent product would have been only about, I want to say, $35 for 25 pounds.
Uh-huh.
So I think what's going to happen is all of the material that was manufactured at the higher prices for commodities last year and the year before that are going to have to exit the marketplace and be replaced by product that has been manufactured to reflect the current downward trend. It's going to take a little bit of time.
Most
You know,
definitely,
that's
and I
just
think
it.
in the higher priced, right? So the things that are um that we find are a little bit more novel technologies, for example, slow release fertilizers and things of that nature, it's probably going to take even longer for that to happen too. So I think the moral of the story is this is be cognizant and reticent of what's out there in the marketplace. Ask your suppliers too, especially if you're on the pro side. Ask your suppliers what's been sitting in inventory for a while, what needs to get used up and sold off, and
Hmm.
maybe they'll catch you a deal. Those are things, and hopefully that you're taking advantage of already. But if not, something that you can certainly
Ryan,
ask about. But yes,
that that is what usually happens to me is that my supplier often turns me on to the products that nobody else wants to use. Okay? No, really, that's how it was. Is said, hey, we have stuff that they don't want to use it, and they say, hey, and they told me, we know you know how to use this. You know how to make
well,
this,
there's
make this,
that's the kind of
usable. And I said,
the
sure,
flexibility. That's the flexibility that you need to have, though, Ray. So, like, I
yeah,
guess real quick
yeah.
on that note is how would you tell somebody that's whether they've been in the business for a while or they have not, right? How do you
Hmm.
evaluate those products to see if they are going to fit, especially if there's something that's maybe not used widely, so maybe you're not as comfortable with it, or what would you do to maybe scour those lists because they can be long and expansive. I usually get some that are 10, 12 pages long, just from a small company here in the Midwest, for example. But go on.
Well, I this is kind of like the same mantra in the health and fitness worlds, in that they say if it fits your macros. That is how I evaluate something. So if something has an appropriate source of nitrogen and potassium, for example, I'm in. Okay. And if something fits in the way that I make the applications, then I'm definitely in. And that's kind of where I can sometimes get deals, because everybody, for example, is used to pushing a spreader, or else sending out illiterate laborers to recreate the scene from the Dark Ages, sowing a wheat field, for example. But hey, I can get deals on soluble materials. I can get deals on bags that had a forklift accident, because I tell my supplier, hey, if the bag got cut, no problem, because I'll transfer that product into a airtight and watertight drum, upon receipt, no problem. I mean, I'll take the cut bag. It's okay.
So there you go, folks. Tonight's tip and trick is scratch and dent fertilizer bin. All right.
Yes.
Big believers
yes.
in it right here. Big believers in it. So moving on here, we're going to cop a crossover to Sweden. Actually, not Sweden, just Europe in general. But the Swedish minister expects job only half done on pesticide reduction plan. A common position among the EU agriculture ministers on the sustainable use of pesticides regulation, or SUR, S-U-R, as an acronym, will not be reached under the Swedish EU presidency. Swedish Agriculture Minister Peter Kullgren told Euractiv in an exclusive interview. The contentious but ambitious proposal aims to slash the use and risk of pesticides in half by 2030, as set out in the EU's flagship food policy, the Farm to Fork strategy. But progress on the file has not been smooth running, with EU agriculture ministers formally demanding an additional impact assessment to the Commission to get more information before proceeding, effectively stalling negotiations on the crucial file. However, Swedish minister told Euractiv that on parts of the file not linked to the impact assessment, EU ministers, quote unquote, intend to start working on compromised text based on the contributions of member states and with the most likely aim of presenting a progress report in June. Quote unquote, we intend to continue the examination of the Commission's proposal and will take the file forward, Holgren said. Asked whether he expects to seal the deal on a common position of the EU ministers ahead of the talks with the European Parliament before the end of the presidency, the minister said that until the Commission provides more information requested by the Council, the quote-unquote optimistic objective would be an agreement on specific articles, but not a full general approach. The comments come on the back of news that the EU Parliament's Agriculture Committee is not prepared to give its take on the proposal until it's received the supplementary data. In a letter from the committee chair, Norbert Linz, addressed to Parliament President Roberta Metsola, as seen by Euractiv, Linz maintains both legislators obviously will not be in a position to vote on this text before having received and analyzed the above additional elements. As the Council does not schedule a common approach by then, similar to the Agriculture Committee would consider irrelevant giving an opinion on the proposal when an impact assessment is not done yet or pending. So that's the gist of it, Ray. So we've talked about this before. That's kind of curious to get the update, and this is sort of the horse's mouth where folks are. It's the political back and forth, right? So I think there's it sounds to me, this is just my take, sounds like there's a common sense approach that's afoot, and there's a very how should I say, deliberate approach, right, that is trying to slow things down, take in all the data, and nothing against doing that, right, and understanding everything. However, I think the common sense approach understands that the compromise is probably going to fall short of what the hardliners want in this case.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we're playing semantics, red tape, BS games with schedule and everything like that. So, what's this strategy we've talked about before? The farm to fork strategy by the EU. Is there anything that a different impact assessment is going to provide, or do you think this is just trying to muddy the waters?
No, I think this is a good step.
I think Ray froze mid-sentence.
Oh, I thought it was me for a second.
No, it wasn't you.
All
It
right.
was Ray.
Man, I thought I died too. Okay, so
I thought he just dropped the mic. I think this is a good step.
yeah, I thought he dropped the mic or did one of his dramatic pauses. So here's what I'll say is, oh, Ray, I do think that there is something to this, right? In the sense that There might be more information that comes out from an impact assessment, but I think more pressing would be the monitoring of this program, right? So if we're going to institute this, how are they going to monitor and make sure that these reductions actually take place? And two, again, we keep going back to this whole velocity of change argument. What is going to be done, right, to ensure that there's development of alternative crops, alternative species, developments, cultivars, whatever the case might be, outside of the product realm, right? And then even within the product realm, do we have the incentives in place for private industry to develop these? I don't know. I don't know if that's the case here in the EU. Be interested to see how this plays out the rest of the way. Now, we'll move over to our final headline here. Kind of an interesting take here. It's a little bit of a summary on a study that was done here. If mine's going to load, did I die too? Are we all dead?
No, well, I hear you.
Somebody's dead.
Ray said
I
his
can-
PC glitched.
Oh, it's okay. Now we'll take this here and give it hell. If this thing will load. Yeah, here we go. All right. So, study warns conventional pesticide toxicity while urging organic alternatives. So, ambitions of the European Green Deal to have pesticide use by 2030 have resulted in raising organic options as promising natural pesticide alternatives. However, the European Crop Protection Association, the ECPA, has warned, quote unquote, ecological trade offs implied by an increase in organic agriculture, such as increased pesticide use as greater quantities of organic fertilizer being used across larger land areas are needed to maintain the current level of productivity. In response, the Organics of Europe, umbrella organization for organic agriculture in Europe, commissioned a assessment to investigate these claims, finding that synthetic pesticides are highly toxic compared to their organic counterparts. Well, okay, a fair and accurate statement. The evaluation published in the journal Toxins found that 55% of the 256 active substances in mostly synthetic pesticides permitted in conventional agriculture carry health or environmental hazard warnings. In comparison, 134 natural and active substances permitted under organic agriculture, only 3% have similar warnings. All right, so it goes on to say organics have been touted, and we can slide down to this next section here. Organics touted as a robust solution. However, the authors of the study argue that organic alternatives to synthetic pesticides will reduce toxic applications and provide a steadfast safeguard capable of maintaining food security. Quote unquote, organic farms focus on preventative measures such as using robust varieties, sensible crop rotations, maintaining soil health, and increasing biodiversity on the field to avoid external inputs. This is why around 90% of the farmland, especially arable farming, pesticides are used, not even natural substances. Nevertheless, if pests get out of hand, beneficial insects, microorganisms, pheromones, or deterrents are organic farmers' second choice. Leah Below, president of the Agroecology Europe,
Time's up.
agrees.
It's over.
There you go. She says that right now, too. The implementation of the farm to fork strategy and the biodiversity strategy with its pesticide reduction targets is essential to establish resilient agroecological food systems in Europe. So they go on here to talk about, some other things, microorganisms as pesticides. So basically trying to find predators in the environment that will target undesirable pests, things that we see from time to time. All this stuff, and again, the back and forth nature of this, the politicalization of this topic in terms of what's right and what's wrong. It's not necessarily what's right and what's wrong. The answer is somewhere very much in the middle, and it's going to be, sort of turning that filter from black to white or into the gray space, right, and try to figure out, okay, here's where we are now. We've got to move in this direction, but how far can we move reasonably without drawing in the extra scrutiny that pesticide applications involve, but also understanding that the organic side of things, like all that stuff about nevertheless, if pesticides get out of hand, beneficial insects, microorganisms, pheromones, or deterrents, it's a little bit of sunshine on puppy dogs. We gotta be careful with that. So interesting times. It's gonna be fun to watch. And with that, we are going to jump over J Pink into my favorite segment, Joe Knows Turf.
Real quick, I was just going to chime in, Ray's final thoughts on the whole Swedish thing. The reality that the current world situation hopefully brought to the forefront is that dystopian environmental mandates have consequences, save the earth, but at the expense of poverty and starvation. I can only hope that rational power, people in power can see that depopulation is the real agenda.
Joe knows turf. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm gonna give you a bunch of accurate turf facts today because Joe knows turf.
What a lead in there, you know.
You're welcome, DeMay.
Ray says that the EU is trying to exterminate continents of people through not feeding them, and we're jumping into Geno's turf. So there's that cheery intro. Now, listen. First off, just want to say to our sponsor, Joe, he's got a new gig, and go ahead and throw that up there for us, Jay Pink. Make sure everybody knows about this as an alternative. Tuesday nights, 8:55 Eastern time, in the evening there. It's the Joe and Travis show. I don't know if they have a name for it yet, but somebody's coming for them. I don't know who or what, but anyway, I said last week, and I'll say it this week too, and keep going here, beating the drum, is Joe is our sponsor, and we're glad to see him doing great things out there. And I think that if you don't like us, if you hate us as a show, hate the things we say and we stand for, this is an alternative. And I'm glad that there's an alternative out there for us, because you know what, there isn't an alternative for this this guest that we're about to have on here as a part of Jono's Turf. And I just simply cannot find a class to put him in which he exists only by himself. He's literally a top, living in his own world, in his own space, amongst lawn care YouTube. And so let's go ahead and watch a couple of these clips from Mr. Ron Henry.
What rate are you using certainty with, and are you using surfactant with it? Because I'll tell you, like, I did an application on the turf park, the Real Rollers Turf Park, and I also did one on Alex's lawn near his mailbox where he had some POA as well too. And the turf park has been 10 days, and Alex's lawn has been about the same thing, and it's already dying off. Like it's already yellowing pretty strongly, and it's another week or so it's going to be pretty much dead. So I'd like to see. Tell you what, if you don't mind, send me pictures of what you're dealing with. So this is my email, ron@golfcourselawn.com. You should have it. Send me a picture of how how it's progressing. The rate that you use for POA is heavier than the rate that you need to use for sedges. So for sedges in the summertime, you can get by with, and I did this in the video that I posted last week, I think, on controlling weeds in your lawn. For sedges,
All right.
For sedges,
Pause real quick, J Pink. So again, we're talking about certainty here for POA control in the southeast. So that's one here. Let's dive into the second one, and then we'll react all at the end.
Friday, I threw down the awesome Certainty Celsius combo plus surfactant. Had inspected rain 4 to 5 hours after application. Should I be concerned? You should be okay, Dwayne. I mean, it'd been better to not have rain, but given that you use surfactant, it likely was dry, and you're still going to get a good result with it. You know, guys, on the topic of Celsius and certainty, so one thing some of you guys have been asking for is Celsius here recently has made available Celsius in a smaller packet. So actually, I'll show you guys here on the store. Or actually, I'll show you. Yeah, I can do both. We'll go with this. We can on the topic of Celsius and certainty. So you go to shop, go to Weed Killer, and Celsius before was really only available in this 10 ounce, right? Which is really, to be completely honest, this is the best deal as far as, even though it's like $160, this is still the best deal as far as like the amount of applications you get, the cost per application, and just being able to have enough product that you're not going to have to buy it anytime soon for years and years and years. However, some people just want to be able to get a single application down, do a bit of cleanup, do a bit of spot spraying. So here recently, there's been a new option that's been introduced that is a single application, a single dose. So this is 0.226 ounces of Celsius. So what that looks like, I've actually got one of them here. We got some in and it sold out really quickly. So we've already got some more coming in. So I think it was before March 10th when we expect our next shipment. And so if you guys want to pre-order it, you can. But this is what it looks like, right? So what's cool about this is that if you have, again, you're doing some spot spraying and you don't think you're going to be having to do it regularly, and you just don't want, and you don't really care that you're paying a bit more for the application, this 0.226 is enough for 2 gallons of water at the high rate. Now, they also say you can use this the same amount with 4 gallons of water. That's a lower rate, and if you were gonna use that in the summertime when it was hot, I'd say you could get away with using one of these over 4 gallons of water. If it were me, I would limit like one of these to 2 gallons of water, because that's a concentration that I find you get a better control, you get a better result with. So for those of you guys that were asking for it, we got some in and it's all gone. We have some more coming in, but now as far as Celsius, you've got an option here for a single use packet. Again, this is 0.226, or in my opinion, 2 gallons worth of water, enough for 2,000 square feet. And there's going to be more available here soon. I say March 10th, we intend to have some in before then. And again, if you want to get yours locked in, you can pre-order it, and as soon as it comes in, it'll go out to you. Or if you want to wait, you can wait too. But again, the best deal is still the this one, the 10 ounce, as far as just what your cost per application goes. But
Okay. Last one. Throw this last one up, and this is the one that'll be really the icing on the cake. Oh, not that one here. Yeah, there you go. We'll go
I think
back
he
to
says
that.
his grass looks like curly fries. Yeah. So I think this question, the 305 whips, that question about was in I think he's referring to tip burn. I think that's what he's talking about, is tip burn. And the way to prevent tip burn in Primo with Primo Max or Next Spec Ethyl is very simple. Just 2 ways you can do it. You can either add fertilizer with it. That's going to help reduce it. A way to prevent it entirely is to take whatever the application rate is for your particular grass type and split it and cut it in half. So instead of applying, again, a good example to make the math easy, if you take like Kentucky bluegrass, where it's 0.60 ounces with a gallon of water over 1,000 square feet once per month, instead of doing that, take the 0.60, cut it in half, apply 0.30 in the beginning of the month and 0.30 the middle of the month, and that's going to prevent you from having the you're not going to have the issues with tip burn. I did that all of last year and love the results. There's really no negatives to going that route 305. So
Okay,
hope that helps. If
right
that's what
there.
he's asking.
Okay. So we're gonna unpack this and we're gonna go back to front, okay? Because the Primo one is one I definitely want to talk about in a larger sense, right? This is what happens, right, when people are, I don't know what point they're at in the Dunning-Kruger frame of reference there, but boy howdy, there's a lot of advice being thrown around out there and not a lot of thought being put behind it, or experience in this case. And you know what? I'm not going to sit here and trash Ron Henry. I'm just going to say that you got to be very careful with how you give advice to people, and especially when it's like a 3-hour infomercial. That's the part that kind of gets a little bit kooky. And I think even Joe and Travis would agree with that portion, right? So to keep things simple here, let's look at the Primo issue to start. JP, go ahead and throw up that link. So what Ron is talking about, or what his viewers were talking about, was that the turf looks really, really what they would call spindly. And I'll see if I can find a good picture here. And essentially what happens is, right, under heavy regulation, you have this effect called attenuation, right? And in that particular sense, you get these real spindly blades that kind of writhe up. Ooh, this is a perfect picture. I'm going to go ahead and share this on with J Pink real quick. There you go. And it's not every single blade of grass. It's like individual blades that come out on their own, and they grow way faster, and they get this real spindly, like almost curly fry like growth pattern, right? And so right here, you'll see in the center of this photo, if you're watching on the video format, in and amongst a bunch of other cool season grass, this is a blade of what's probably either creeping, it looks like creeping bent grass potentially, that is sticking straight up right above lower cut turf. And this can even happen in higher cut turf. The issue here is that this grass has been over-regulated, and so much so that this happened a lot one summer about 7 years ago on a lot of golf courses in particular. Really hot, wet summer that year. And so growth rates were kind of like all over the place. And so Primo, if you don't know, is a growth regulator that works by slowing down gibberellic acid production, which is the growth hormone, right, that increases cell elongation, right? So in the process here of messing with the synthesis of that particular growth hormone, the plant kind of goes into a slower production of that. But if growth rates are higher because of water and ambient air temperature, and if the primo is degrading at a faster rate inside the plant, right, because of high temperatures, because we know that's what influences its degradation inside the plant and its effective use time, you could have some problems, right? So Ron is saying, hey, take the label rate and go ahead and just apply that on a monthly basis, either if you want to do it one time or if you want to split it up and go in multiple apps. I think he suggested in the video, taking, for instance, a Kentucky bluegrass rate of 0.6 fluid ounces per thousand and dividing that out over 2 different applications, right? I would say that that's probably on the higher end of the spectrum. Some of those label rates on Primo, specific to geography, where you're at in the country, the type of grass you have, all that becomes very, very experiential and a little less just straight off the label and go. So all that being said, his viewers are coming back and saying, hey, there is a problem, right, that we're seeing in terms of what's going on with the grass. And it could be time's up, it's over. You got to be careful with this stuff. So that's my point there. The other point related to the herbicides is that I think the recommendation or the question that came up, right, what should I do if I had just applied Certainty and Celsius together as a herbicide combination with a surfactant, and it rained 5 or 6 hours later? Okay. Here's the big problem, right? The big problem is the Celsius, because the Celsius moves like a mofo. Like, it will go off target real easy and real quick, even if you have a surfactant. That doesn't matter. Okay. So to that extent, you got to be very, very careful on how you give those instructions. In fact, the instructions that are listed even on the golf course lawn website, go ahead and throw that up for me real quick, J Pink. And let's see this. Slide on down there. Keep going, keep going, keep going. All the way. It's going to be on that right-hand column. And right there, water instructions. Do not water this product in. Do not apply. Oh, here we go. Do not apply if rain is forecasted within the following 48 hours. All right. So the question came in. It's on your website. This is important stuff. This isn't like, hey, the fertilizer got washed in a little too good or something like that. And all those things are bad. But this particular one, you got to be extra, extra careful with. And so, again, where you get your advice, and I don't care if you're a pro, if you're an amateur, or anything like that. You can tell me to stay in my lane, do whatever. I don't care, but this is not a good thing if it happens, right? So you have to be careful with these. It even go back up to the top here real quick, all the way to the top on this page for me, J Pink. Slide all the way up. Okay, so they talk about this being a professional solution, right? These are professional products. Please be careful with that. I implore you that you need to do that. So with that being said, that's this week's Joe Knows Turf. Check out Joe and Travis Tuesdays, 9 p.m. The alternative, the anti-grass factor. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that if you don't like us, you got something else to like. These guys they're likable guys. They just, they jive to a different turkey. All right. Now, with that being said, it's time to go in and check out the birds. Now, there's a strong likelihood that soundtrack was not a soundtrack. It was actual live audio from Ray's house, where he has gotten off the stream here and is doing unnatural things with Sheila. And good for him, actually. He is rebooting his computer, and his computer gets the first burn of this evening. Now, that all being said, let's dive in and see what we're dealing with here. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that America's most boring association is fighting the planet. All right, so I'm not going to read this article. We'll leave it in our links below. But basically, the crux of this whole thing is that homeowners associations are driving the push for perfect lawns in our landscapes, in our subdivisions, in certain neighborhoods and things like that, and that their need and desire for this, this unnaturally perfect lawn is what's creating more problems than it solves, right? And so I do think it's an interesting thing to talk a little bit about this on our show, for the simple fact that there are a lot of larger landscape contractors, even smaller ones, right, that take care of these HOAs. And I can speak from experience in saying that I've read over a lot of these contracts and the specifications that go along with them, and I got to say that they're fucking dreadful. I mean, usually right off the bat, the boilerplate BS that goes into these things and the level of thought that's put into them is what did Dr. Shattuck say? A number, the lowest possible positive number above zero. That's my level of confidence in these. Just the same. A lot of times it is unnecessary to hilt in terms of what is told to contractors that they need to use, and there's very little wiggle room. And contractors are simply pricing out what's in the specifications and documents. And other times, it's such a wide berth, right, that you'll have contractors come in there and sort of help write those specs and kind of get themselves into a situation where they're selling whatever it is they want to sell. And quite other times, the prices come back so apples to oranges, nobody can tell. The point, though, from an agronomic perspective is, I see a lot of things here where, especially even older, subdivisions and HOAs where, there's still a call to put down, between 4 and 5 pounds of nitrogen, per year, in lawns that are well established and don't necessarily need it. And in other cases, you've got brand new subdivisions where clearly, we've all seen it. We've talked about it on the show with practitioners and DIYers about crappy soil and just, poor soil that was used to put back into front and backyards, common areas, things of that nature. And, not giving those contractors the room, within the pricing structure or within the specifications to deal with those issues effectively, it kind of hamstrings everybody. So I think the point here is that if you do work with HOAs, right, and if you're a pro or if you're a DIYer and you're a member of an HOA, that you ought to question that a little bit more, right? So I know everybody wants to get the sale, when you're a pro and you want to get in there and bid your number and try to beat all those other guys out. But even if you don't, it's good to try and find the folks that want to do it the right way and do it a better way and try to educate them. And through that process, delivering some of that value, that maybe you'll have a better shot at getting it next time. And you'll learn a little bit too along the way about how to price these better and how to use, unique and tailored solutions as opposed to just the basic bitch bullshit, Ray, that goes into all of these. What do you think about HOAs, Ray? I can't wait to hear this.
Okay. What I think about HOAs is they're essentially unconstitutional.
Get fucked.
Exactly. Because they are essentially trying to circumvent all manner of private property rights. In other words, you sign into an HOA, that's as if you are entering a world where all of your rights no longer apply. That's one thing. And then, Ryan, as my camera was switching back on, I caught what you said about how there is an opportunity to do better regarding standards of work and so forth, but then in an HOA, virtually impossible, because common sense and reason goes out the door in the name of short-term appearance. That is my big criticism of an HOA, is basically I've gone toe-to-toe with HOAs too, myself. And do you know what I tell them?
I can imagine some of the things you may have told them in the past and think of telling them, but just haven't said yet. Not many of them are good.
And no, none of them are good. Because basically, I end up telling an HOA, I give zero fucks about short-term appearance, because short-term appearance all goes back to how you always say, Ryan, in turfgrass, the only things that happen fast are bad things.
This is very true. And
Right?
I've seen things happen
Yeah.
fast. Let me say that.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of them aren't good, right?
Well,
a lot of them ain't good.
I'm just saying I've seen things happen fast. That's all. I'll stop it right there. But I think
Mhm.
what you're saying is that you know, when Green Dot goes into the HOA, I think what you need to ask for, the sell should be a very hard one. It should be, I'm here for a lifetime contract, which means until I die or your landscape dies, I'm here. Get it, people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I'm not running away. I mean, I tell people, listen, I take responsibility and ownership for whatever happens, be it good, be it bad, and because I take that ownership, I will seek long-term solutions for all the problems that I've identified. I'm not here for the quick fix. You know, I don't do that because Ryan,
Yes.
do you know what stacking one quick fix on top of another is? I call that hospice care. You're basically doing short-term symptom management, knowing that it's never going to get better, and I'm sorry, Uncle's going to die. That's it.
Well, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I love your bedside manner. Very gentle, very very redeeming. I think the thing to think about though is that, in to your point about the old axiom, you know, the only thing that happens quickly in agriculture or turfgrass is crop failure, right? Is that
Mhm.
you know, when stacking all of these solutions on top of one another, I have found both an experience and an observation that that is the time when you are most likely to make a mistake and have a failure because you've not thought the whole thing through, right? And how A affects
Mhm.
B and B affects E and E affects B, right? You know, all those
Yeah. You know,
interrelationships.
Ryan,
And that's when you fuck
this
shit up.
reminds me. Yeah, this reminds me of how in a busy hospital, mistakes get made, during the code that were inevitably you're going to lose the patient, and likewise when dealing with a turfgrass or landscape situation where you are running around applying all of these quick fixes in the name of a short-term improvement of appearance, sooner or later something bad's going to happen. Mistakes will be made, unforeseen circumstances are going to pop up, and then sorry, you're going to lose your patient. And Ryan, that is just something that I have learned being in lawn and landscape management for 30 years, okay? I learned it.
Well, so the
And I
last
learned
thing
it the
want-
hard way.
Oh, well, I think we all have the hard way. Is that if you do something you don't learn from it, it's just not worth it. I don't care if that's success or failure. And the thing I wanted to point out about failure, especially with HOAs, and I think we all know this from, you know, if you've done residential or if you've done, you know, a lot of clients and customers, is you understand that everybody's unique. And I would say that especially with HOAs, now you have a whole collection of these unique individuals, and they're on a board together. And boy, howdy, does that get
Mhm.
messy. I think the
Mhm.
most often off reason I see landscape companies fail in HOAs is not necessarily because of their work. I would put the workmanship at probably number 3, but number 1 is by far and away communication. Poor communication of what
Mhm.
we're gonna do, what you're expecting that we're gonna do when we say that we're gonna do this, and somebody's expectation isn't set, and therefore if it's not set, it's not met, and they get pissed
Mhm.
when that doesn't happen or what they expect to happen doesn't happen. And so I would say that if you're gonna go in the HOA space, you know, I don't know that it can be lucrative. I know there's companies that bid those, you know, razor thin margins, and it's tough to compete sometimes. But I do know that in certain areas of the country where those bigger companies aren't, It's an opportunity, and all I would say is it's a really good opportunity to work on your communication skills, and to be more tangible and specific, it is about finding what you just said, Ray. What is not right? Have them verbalize to you what's not right. I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, what they think isn't right, it has nothing to do with really what's not right. And you've got to kind of bring them full circle and say, oh, hey, by the way, you think the grass is bad, right? But nobody's managed your irrigation system and actually like adjusted times or audited zones or anything like that for the last 5 years that you had your previous, company or whatever. So let's talk about what
Yes.
this looks like in real terms, because I'm
Mhm.
going to set some expectations. I'm going to make your turf look better, which you're not happy about. Number 2, I'm going to save you on your water bill because it's probably sky high and fucked up because nobody's doing their job. And number
Yeah.
3, if I can't do those 2 things, I'm going to find out exactly why I can't, because it's going to manifest itself in other ways, and we will figure out what those ways are after we've eliminated these other 2 possibilities. How does that sound,
Mhm.
Mrs. Jones? Boom.
Yep.
Right off and go into it.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
all I'm saying, I was glad I was happy we got to talk about HOAs, Ray. I was waiting for you to, dive into communist politics and Marxism and everything else, but we stayed clear of that for the most part, and I'm happy
No,
for it.
because it's got nothing to do with that. It's more like, again, communication and us as an industry. I feel like we need to do better in not playing the games of falling into hospice care situations or not actually addressing problems, because what I typically see is doing more of what is not working harder. That is the thing that I see. And, that even applies to dealing with individuals on high value properties, where one of the things that I tell them is, if you have me, one of the things you're going to find out about me is that I do not believe in doing more of what everybody else is doing harder. I mean, I don't believe in that. And I asked them, so then why did you even agree to contract with me if that's what you expected? Because homie don't play that.
No, that's when you say, instead of get off my lawn, you say, get me the fuck off your lawn. That's how you do that, right?
Yep.
Get me
Yep.
off your lawn.
Yeah. Yeah. Get me off your lawn. I mean, it's like, and actually, that is when people realize that things are different with me, because I am not begging for my job. I'm telling them, okay, do tell me to leave and not come back. Please do. Tell me.
So Brent in the chat, which normally we don't reference the live stream that we have going on, but this show is recorded live on Sunday nights and then posted on Wednesday.
Mhm.
So our Patreon members get access to it during our recording, and so it's fine and fun to have them participate. And Brent from Pro Turf Services, who was recently on the show, just said that HOAs are not usually a communication problem, however, they are a comprehension problem. And I think that's what I was
It's a
trying to
comprehension.
that number 2 reason. I think the number 1 reason is communication. I think number 2 is comprehension, because if you can't
Comprehension,
communicate,
that's-
you're never going to get to the comprehension part, right? We can tell them what we're going to
Mhm.
do all day long, but if we don't tell them why it's important and help set those expectations. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Brent, that the comprehension part is more about, again, setting expectations. Hey, here's what's going to happen, and here's why, and here's what we should see from this. Either we're going to see a result, or we're going to identify, further things that we need to work on and work
Mhm.
our way down the flow chart in getting their property the way that they want it to the extent possible, or pulling a full array and cutting the electric to their house and capping off their water lines before you leave the property, maybe slashing a tire or two, something like that. Okay, so moving on, we're gonna go to our next burn, which is actually a video from the LA Times talking a little bit about this nice woman in Pasadena, California, that was paid to remove her lawn, and what the result of that was. This is about 5 minutes, but I think it's sort of important. There's a little bit of like dead space in the middle of video-ish, like B-roll stuff, but we'll listen to the whole thing real quick and then dive in.
Supplies continuing to tighten. The Metropolitan Water District is paying homeowners to remove their grass yards. Approved applicants receive $5 per square foot. Not bad, given that the average lawn size in California is about 5,000 square feet. So we went to Pasadena to meet one resident who recently took advantage of the turf replacement program and pulled out her lawn.
Came here when I was 22 from a place that rained a lot. And I immediately noticed that everybody here nurtures their grass. They're trying to encourage it, fertilize it, water it. And it just, to me, was odd. Because where I grew up, if you mowed the yard and you missed a week, you might blow your mower out because the grass was so long. In other places, you just have rain. But since we have none here anymore, it was just really hard looking at all the water that went to grass. I think we watered, well, it was how much and then how long. So I want to say that from 2 to 3 times a week. And one doesn't even think about it in terms of how many gallons that is. You're just trying to make your grass green. I think the American dream has always been like house, grass, and yard, and I just feel like that's got to change.
Well, we're working now just to remove the grass. Normally it takes me a day, but today with a machine, we do it, faster, maybe like an hour. Well, we cut the sections because, the grass is heavy. We come with the dirt. Normally it's 16 inches by 2 feet. So it's more easy for us to take to the truck. But sometimes my guys, you see my guys, they are strong, so they lift it up.
It was remarkable. I mean, it was incredible how fast they went, and I had heard horror stories with sod cutters, just how long they take, how much the blades need to be sharpened. And I mean, it removed our whole yard in, I want to say 30 minutes. It was incredible, maybe less.
Use a really cheater. I tried to bring all the roots. We're waiting like a couple of weeks. We planning after that, and then we can start doing the dripping system. I hope everybody to do this to save the water for California. It'd be nice.
Pause.
And it really should be.
All right. Again, big picture down to small picture first. There's a 5-minute long video here about a woman that's taking grass out of her lawn and putting in native plants and some mulch and a bunch of rock, and it doesn't look good. I have questions about its functionality in the landscape and all those things. But can we get off this? You were talking about this before, Ray. The self-help influencers that she's talking about, like, this is some big change. Like she just got a new kidney or something, and it's took our fucking grass out of our front yard. I mean, let's put this into perspective here, okay? Like, it ain't that big of a change. I mean, switching toilet paper brands is probably more impactful to this woman's life than switching out the lawn, I would think, right?
Switching out
I
the
don't know.
lawn. And I have to ask now, why did this lawn need so much water? Unless, of course, this lawn was a cool season grass growing in the very hot or warm part of California. I gotta ask
so
that.
LA.
LA, yeah, because to me, when somebody tells me LA, I am thinking St. Augustine or Bermuda. However, I have met people from that part of California where they insist on growing tall fescue. And they can do that in Southern California, Ryan. However, do you know what the problem is with trying to grow tall fescue in Southern California?
What's that?
It needs a shit ton of water.
Yeah.
Okay, it needs a lot of water, and the reason why it can work in Southern California until it doesn't work is because Southern California doesn't have the humidity that drives disease pressure. So as long as you water that turf type tall fescue in Southern California, that turf type tall fescue will keep on growing. No problems. But you cut the water off, party's over. Or you reduce the water, party's over.
So this was interesting to see the transformation, if you will, of like the install and everything like that. And in this case, I know if you're listening audio only, essentially what they did was they took out the sod, then they tilled up the soil that was there. They set a couple of the rock features in there, and came back a couple months later by the timeline that's shown in the video, and they installed some native plants and a whole shit pile of mulch, right? Just like hardwood mulch. I wonder how that all looks, Ray, after, the several storms that California has been battered by here over the last several weeks. And, again, looking at it from an erosion perspective and things like that, like, are we trading one problem for another? And I understand that water is a scarce resource. Don't get me wrong. And I understand that there's far less rain in Southern California than there is in most other places of the country. That being said, right, here's my question is, what is the water consumption of these lawns, and have we done everything that we can in some of these spaces to make this the best choice? And other thing I would ask too is that, and I don't know the answer to this, I'm just asking the question, and I'm gonna, when I have time here these next few weeks, is dig into this, is what type of research and planning and everything like that has been put towards making the best choices for what these landscapes look like when they are removed of turf and put back to something that would be considered low maintenance, right, or low water consumption. Because I don't even know if you could say this is necessarily low maintenance. You're going to have to deal with weeds. You're going to have many of the same problems, except for now you don't have the grass and thatch and a root system, right, that's going to filter out some of those pollutants and things like that, and moreover is control erosion, right? We're hoping that the mulch can do that, but in this case, I mean, there's only so much that it can do. So I don't know. What do you think, Ray, about just the overall implementation of this and where we go from here? Is this a fad or a real trend that we're going to look back on, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now and be like, well, that didn't work?
You know what, Ryan? What I suspect is going to happen is that these alternative landscapes, right? They're fine and good in isolation, but when every single yard in LA turns into either rocks or hardwood mulch and a couple of perennials scattered through that landscape, I suspect that what's going to happen is the unintended consequences are going to be glaring. And when I say glaring, we're going to see, for example, all of a sudden it's going to be realized that ambient temperature in the neighborhoods has gone up. Therefore, electrical consumption goes up for cooling. And then, to your point, the Bay Area Environmental Authority is going to then ask, why the fuck is there all of this silt and runoff going into San Francisco Bay that wasn't there previously? What's going on?
Yeah, and that's
Because
I don't know what's going on in the northern part of the state. If that's happening, I would assume it is. I'll look for that too. Go ahead.
yeah, because what's because what I'm always acutely aware of is silt runoff. That is like a big environmental issue in my state. Is in order to attempt to protect the health of the coastal ecosystem, silt and soil runoff is a very stringently regulated issue. In fact, in a lot of cases, you need special permission from the city and county of Honolulu, as I was saying, to change any kind of area that was designated to be turf grass into something that's not turf grass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has to go through the building and environmental department, and it's scrutinized.
So here's all I would ask is that if maybe we'll see if Aldo or somebody like that can hook us up. Jim Barrett out there at UC Riverside or likewise, right? Just curious on in practice, right? Like what people are seeing of these, not after they've been installed. We just had the big HD TV reveal, right? Show me one of these 3 or 5 years down the road with a homeowner that manages it like most homeowners manage their lawn, right? I'm really curious to see what these look like and what sorts of ecological benefits or detractors that they are presenting to these environments, and if you implement these at scale, what ends up happening. So I don't know, Ray, but it ought to be fun to see the results. So if somebody out there knows somebody who installs these or maintains these, particularly in Southern California, has any recommendations on who to reach out to, would love to do that from an academic perspective, from landscape architects, and especially those that maintain these. That'd be we'd love to talk to them and just learn more. Maybe we're wrong. I have no idea, but just trying to think about it from a common sense perspective. But we certainly do lack common sense. What we don't lack, though, is feel-good stories about turf grass in this week's Returns.
La 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 la.
I'm back to Ray, and guess what, buddy? We're going to talk about your favorite subject, Zoysia grass, and the hybrid development for the transition zone. All right, so a multidisciplinary systemic breeding effort among several universities has effectively developed multiple Zoysia grass hybrids with improved turf color, winter hardiness, freeze tolerance, and large patch tolerance and finer leaf texture than Meyer Zoysia grass. Since its release in 1951, Meyer Zoysia grass remains one of the most winter hardy Zoysia grass cultivars, which is also why it's still the most widely used Zoysia grass cultivar on the golf courses in the transition zone today. Research-proven differences in winter hardiness among cultivars of Zoysia grass is one of the main reasons that Zoysia grass cultivar selections vary by geographic location. In the last 2 decades, breeding programs have made progress in the development of Zoysia hybrids with comparable winter hardiness to Meyer, but with superior establishment rate, turf quality, shade tolerance, leaf texture, or pest tolerance as compared to Meyer. Some examples include Chisholm Zoysia grass, Innovation, and Lobo Zoysia grass. However, breeding efforts continue because there are still many improved traits yet to be desired, such as improved disease tolerance. So they go into this infographic here where they're talking about this multi-university effort And essentially, it starts out with they've got almost 2,900 progeny, which are individual plants that are planted across 3 sites, and they've selected these all the way down. So essentially, if you check out the article, it's pretty interesting. This is a typical plant breeding effort where they take stuff, first in the greenhouses, select from there a smaller subset, and continue to work down until they're into field trials. Okay, and what they've did here the last several years, I'll just kind of forward us on from 2012 to 2019 through 21. They're planting the top 10 varieties that they've chosen out of these nearly 2,900 that they started with. They're planting those at golf courses and research centers in the transition zone. Then collecting data on freeze tolerance and some other things. And then finally here in 2019, they took what they thought were the best 3 and they put those in the NTEP Zoysia grass trial. So we'll see how that goes. But so Ray, it's a collaborative effort. It says between Texas A&M, Kansas State, and Purdue, which is interesting because Zoysia grass, you may or may not know, is pretty prevalent even in the southern part of Ohio. Ray, mostly on golf.
I know it is.
See it on home lawns, and that's overblown. I think a little bit in terms of how functional it is and this and that. I think some of the improved zoysias would be interesting to try in a lawn setting here in Ohio, but particularly on golf course, it's very predominant grass. Southwest Ohio and down into Kentucky and points south there. But my question for you is there, and I don't know, is there a silver bullet zoysia grass that you think will come out of this that works seemingly most places? I don't want to say everywhere because that's a broad statement.
Actually, the Zoysia cultivar, believe it or not, that has proven to be the most hardy has been this legacy variety called Emerald Zoysia. Are you familiar with Emerald Zoysia, Ryan?
I can't say that I am in practice or in person. No. Meyer,
but okay, the difference between Emerald and Meyer is how much more disease and nematode resistant Emerald Zoysia is versus the Zoysia japonica accessions. Because the thing about the Zoysia japonica accessions that I've found out about the hard way is, for example, a lot of these cultivars or selections are extremely susceptible to lance and sting nematodes, and there has yet to be a japonica variety that is highly resistant to large patch. And the reason why I know I've seen so many Emerald Zoysia lawns scrapped and replaced with a Zoysia japonica cultivar is because Emerald Zoysia is extremely, and I repeat, extremely difficult to mow. Because Zoysia japonica, Zoysia, Emerald Zoysia is a cross and a selection from this grass called Zoysia tenuifolia. And the natural tendency of Zoysia tenuifolia is to form unmowable mounds and humps. I mean, if you were to look at a Zoysia tenuifolia stand in its, native habitat of Asia, they don't mow it there. But you might say, oh my God, this lawn looks like it has, monkeypox or something. It's all lumps and bumps, Ryan. I mean,
that's the thing. I think that there's so much with Zoysia that so many different traits and characteristics. It does have a lot of upside, in some cases in terms of what it presents, but there's so many different traits that you need to sort of, I would say, control for, right? In terms of appearance and color,
there is
all
a trait.
Those things. Go ahead.
There is a trait that, Ryan, I don't think is being looked at enough, And you know
What's
what that trait is, Ryan?
Lay it on me.
Somebody needs to work on getting the silica content of the tissues down.
So it's not so hard to mow. Why? Explain how that can be problematic.
Okay. Zoysia, even Zoysia japonica, tends to accumulate extremely high concentrations of silica in their leaves and stems and, above ground parts. So texture wise, the grass is stiff. Everybody says that Zoysia is pokey, when they touch it and feel it in person.
Mm-hmm.
But that stiffness, that concentration of silica in the tissues, also means that mowers that have to mow Zoysia, blades get dull extremely fast.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you the idea, Ryan,
Mm-hmm.
guess how many times a year I replace the bed knife on my GM 1000?
I'll say in a given year for Ray on Zoysia in Hawaii, I will say 6 times.
You're not wrong. And guess how many times I need to replace the reel itself? At least yearly.
Jeez. Every year.
Every
Damn,
year
son.
that reel comes off. Every year
That's
that reel
insane.
comes off because no matter what, I mean, I don't care if somebody sells me on that zero contact spin grind only program, which by the way, the zero contact spin grind only reel setup on Zoysia is a real loser. It's a real loser because what happens is that Zoysia will wear off that sharp edge on that reel and bed knife, and next thing you know, you're leaving your turf area a shredded, ugly mess.
Well, and so let me say this, and I'll say this as directly as I can, is that I think that's why we, as a group of turf managers, one, disagree, because I think there are situations that it does work. Zoe's just not one of them. But I think the larger point here is this: is that we're not steadfast on any of our beliefs so much to say that, hey, it works in every single situation, right? And that's just the way it's got to be. Like we're I think far enough along and confident enough in what we do to say that there are no hard, fast rules like that exist in turf, or very few of them, if I can think off the top of my head. So all that being said is that Zoysia grass has a place here in the transition zone. I think it'll be interesting to see. This is I'll leave you with this, Ray, as a teaser of something to think about, and something that we're going to try here, not in a sports field situation, but just as a little FAFO of some. There's one of these. I don't know if it's one that's in NTEP this year, but we will have one of these that we throw up against like Tahoma and Iron Cutter, just to see what happens in Central Ohio when you do stupid stuff with warm season grass in the north, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Time's up. It's over.
But it's not, Matt. It's fucking not. All right. You're not here, but you need to shut the fuck up. All right. Listen. So, let's do this last return here, which takes us up to Maryland. Ray, $4.8 million grant supports sustainable fertilizer research. Waste from poultry farms can be processed into biochar, a carbon-rich material that promotes crop growth but is safer for the environment than traditional fertilizer. All right, they already fucked up the lead. I got a problem with this article. I appreciate what they're trying to do, but that's not the way it works. We'll let them live. All right, they've only been in the Big Ten for like a handful of years. They still got to acclimate themselves to, to be at an Ohio State level. So, anyway, backed by a $4.8 million grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the University of Maryland agriculture researchers are working with partners to develop a more sustainable fertilizer, one that's safer for aquatic ecosystems than traditional alternatives and could even help fight climate change. Standard fertilizers like poultry litter, a nutrient rich mixture of chicken waste, feathers, and bedding, reliably boost crop growth. But excess phosphorus and nitrogen from them can run off into streams, causing algal blooms, oxygen poor dead zones, and other problems that have plagued the Chesapeake Bay and many other water bodies worldwide. The USDA funded research focuses on converting the poultry litter into a material known as biochar through a process called pyrolysis, a slow and controlled burn at an extremely high temperatures in the absence of any oxygen, resulting in a powdery end product high in carbon and other nutrients essential for crop growth. And sounds like we've heard this before. 4-year project working with scientists, Florida A&M, University of Florida, and University of California, Davis will focus on optimizing the process, determining how to best apply it to soils and developing recommendations for farmers. Quote unquote, the technology is there and companies are already commercially producing biochar, so we want to improve the science, make a definitive recommendations for farmers, and make its use more prevalent than it is now, said Rohan Tikikar, an associate professor and extension specialist from Department of Nutrition and Food Science, who's leading the UMD project. It won't fully replace traditional fertilizers, but it could reduce the amount needed. And farmers producing the waste, it could be an additional source of revenue. All right. So they go on to talk about who's involved and everything like that. So, hey, $4.8 million is a lot of money. They should be able to figure some things out. Ray, let me ask you this with this. I think this is a good thing. It's always good to see money being directed towards research on things that we think are promising, right? To vet them out. What would be some of your chief questions, top 1, 2 or so, that you would want to have examined in this research and just to see what's going on?
I would want to see, as part of my question is, what is the actual nutrient efficiency of this product? And number 2, what are the actual effects of putting carbon derived from pyrolysis in the rest of the agronomics of a field? Because, my concern anytime somebody tells me that they're going to be applying porous carbon to an area is, what impact will that have on all of your other agronomic inputs? That is something that I always have a question about, is if you put down all of this carbon that is similar in behavior to what's called activated charcoal, what effect is that going to have on the rest of your agronomic program? And finally, even though I know that poultry litter is fairly clean regarding forever chemicals, are we adequately testing this product for unintended materials in that in the exit stream? Are we testing? I mean, are we keeping track of this?
I don't know.
I don't know, because it seems like every time somebody goes on this kick of trying to recycle or repurpose something, there's unintended consequences, Ryan. I mean, I always, because the unintended consequences thing seems to be a recurring theme every time something outside of the norm is tried or is being promoted. And the unintended consequences, unfortunately to me, are often either not thought about by the promoters of alternatives, or they are seriously downplayed. I mean, please tell me the bad as well as the good and let me decide.
And I'm glad you said all that, because I think that stuff is spot on in terms of what is the ulterior impacts, not necessarily motives, but impacts, right? That we should be aware of. Number one, and number two is what are the standards, right? Like just saying that, oh, hey, biochar works and poultry litter works. Like, what are the standards that those materials need to have as a raw going into these systems, right? And to put them together in a product, right, of poultry litter and biochar together. So I think that would be some of the most telling research. I think they're going to look more at crop performance and everything like that, and maybe not pull back the curtain too much on the raw material side of things, probably because there's not enough funding to do that, or I don't know. But I'll be interested to see how these experiments are designed and set up and the data collection that goes in behind them to support the conclusions or the results thereof. So we'll keep an eye on this for sure. And, hey, crab cakes and biochar, that's what Maryland does, apparently. So, all right. With that, there is no mailbag tonight. And before we get out of here, we're just going to give a plug to our patrons. We've got, a lot of good folks here. We're getting ready to start lawn season up for many of you that are DIYers, that are pros. Some of you have already started already, you crazy bastards. But we're here for it with you for thick and thin. If you don't know about our Patreon, go ahead and check it out, www.patreon.com/burn return. In some parts of the country, you can no longer even buy a gallon of gas for what it costs to become a member at the lowest possible level. But I promise you, all levels are important, not necessarily just to support the show, but to include yourself into our community. It gets you access to our private Discord server, questions answered, dreams shared, losses and crushed dreams as well. And we even get together on Zoom and talk things over, life, liberty, and lawns, and all things in between. So it's fun time. Highly encourage you to check it out and support the show if you can. Because, Ray, we're just a bunch of fledgling guys. We live under rocks in our basements of our parents, dead or alive. And, it's by the grace of God that we're sitting here talking tonight and have internet connection, all because of food stamps. So, that being said, it is time to sign off tonight. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll catch you all on the next one.